My wife said she was taking a work trip with her married boss. I replied, "Have a good trip." Then I sent his wife their hotel booking. Minutes later, my phone exploded. My wife texted me on a Tuesday morning, between my second cup of coffee and a conference call I had been dreading. "Babe, Garrett wants the whole team in Nashville this weekend for the Hargrove account. I'll be back Sunday night. Love you." I read it 3 times, then replied, "Have a good trip." I meant it, because I already knew. I had known for 11 days, and I had spent those days making sure that when the moment came, I would be the calmest man in any room. What happened in the next 48 hours permanently changed 4 lives. One of those people left a voicemail I still keep, not because I replay it, but because sometimes doing the right thing and doing the satisfying thing are neither complete opposites nor exactly the same. My name is Conrad Hale. I am 43 years old, and for the last 14 years, I have worked as a corporate investigator in Atlanta, Georgia. The simplest description of my job is that I find things people try to hide: financial discrepancies, internal fraud, employee misconduct, conflicts of interest, and carefully buried patterns that someone hoped nobody would ever connect. I sit across from polished executives in glass offices on Peachtree Street and ask questions with the patience of a man who already knows the answers. I have been very good at that work for a very long time. For 11 years, I thought I was equally good at being a husband. Simone and I met 12 years earlier at a fundraiser for the Atlanta Community Food Bank. A colleague had dragged me there. Simone had helped organize it through her company's outreach program. She wore a green dress and was arguing, correctly, with a caterer about the dessert table. I found that immediately attractive. 9 months later, we married at Serenbe, south of Atlanta, before about 60 people who loved us. My mother cried. Simone's father gave a toast that made everyone laugh, then fall silent when he said something unexpectedly true. The first 8 years of our marriage were good. I do not mean they merely looked good from the outside while something rotted underneath. They were actually good. We traveled together, hosted dinner parties, argued about things that mattered, and let go of the things that did not. We lived in a house in Decatur, in the kind of neighborhood where people knew their neighbors, and the trees were old enough to have watched several generations come and go. Simone worked in corporate communications for a mid-sized healthcare company, headquartered in Midtown. She was sharp, organized, and gifted at turning complicated information into something clean and direct. I respected that about her. Her boss, Garrett Whitfield, had supervised her for about 3 years. I had met him twice. Once at a company holiday party on a North Avenue rooftop, and once when Simone and I ran into him and his wife, Diane, at Ponce City Market. Garrett was tall and carried the confidence of a man who had been told he was impressive too often. His handshake was slightly too firm, as if he wanted me to notice it. Diane seemed pleasant. We talked for 10 minutes about nothing, then separated, and I barely thought about Garrett again. The first sign was quiet. Hidden things rarely announce themselves. They leave traces people train themselves not to see. 4 months before the Tuesday text, Simone began placing her phone face down on the kitchen counter. For 11 years, it had always been face up, notifications visible. She was not naturally secretive. Once, she left her email logged in on my laptop for 2 weeks, and neither of us cared. I told myself people deserved privacy and that I was being paranoid, but the face-down phone was new. Then came late client calls 3 or 4 nights a week. Communications crises happen, but Simone now took the calls in our home office with the door closed. Another change. Smaller still, she stopped asking about my day. For 11 years, she had asked before I put down my bag, listened closely, and remembered details from the week before. Then the ritual disappeared. I noticed it like music that had played for years, and suddenly stopped, not with alarm, but with sadness. 11 days before her message, I found the hotel booking. I was not searching Simone's phone or surveilling her. I was using our shared desktop to find a homeowner's insurance PDF. Our accounts were linked through a family manager we had created to share calendars, subscriptions, and travel bookings, the ordinary infrastructure of a shared life. When I opened the browser to search the shared drive, the previous session had not fully logged out. The open tab was not the insurance folder. It was a hotel confirmation email for the Grand Hyatt Nashville. 2 nights, Friday through Sunday, booked under Simone's name. The corporate rate code matched her employer's account, which was consistent with a legitimate work trip. The additional guest field was not. It listed Garrett Whitfield. I sat perfectly still for a moment. Then I closed the browser, found the insurance PDF in another folder, printed it, and went to make dinner. I did not confront Simone that night. I did not confront her the following morning or the day after that. Over the next 11 days, I did what I had been trained to do. I gathered information quietly, methodically, and as completely as I could before making a move. In my profession, premature disclosure means confronting someone before you understand the full picture. The moment subjects know what you know, they adjust, destroy evidence, revise stories, and recruit allies. Amateur investigators often need the confrontation more than the truth. I knew that trap and refused to fall into it. So for 11 days, I remained a husband. I made coffee. I asked Simone about her week. I suggested dinner at our favorite Ethiopian restaurant, and we went. The evening was fine. She seemed happy. I sat across from her and felt something for which I still do not have a clean word. It was not exactly anger. It was closer to grief, but grief with a hard edge underneath it. I reviewed only records always accessible to both of us: our shared calendar, travel email, and booking history. A pattern emerged. Simone had taken 6 trips in 7 months. 4 were to cities where I could check whether Garrett attended company events. I will not explain my exact cross-referencing methods, but the information was easy enough to find for someone who knew where to look. Garrett had been present on 3 of those 4 trips. 6 months. The affair had been going on for 6 months, longer than I would have guessed. Every one of those months had also contained Sunday dinners, morning coffee, evenings on the back porch, trips to the farmer's market, and all the small furniture of a life I had believed was real. By the time Simone sent me the Tuesday text about Nashville, I had a complete enough picture. I also had a plan. I did not touch Simone's phone, hack an account, or intercept private communications. Years earlier, she had enabled automatic forwarding of booking confirmations into our shared travel folder so either of us could reach an itinerary. That feature had revealed Nashville and remained active. A follow-up confirmation showed a room upgrade and a note from Garrett's assistant. Mr. Whitfield requested the corner suite with the park view, per his usual preference. It entered the shared folder. Another morning, Simone left her phone charging on the kitchen counter while making coffee. A visible preview from a contact saved as G read, "Can't wait for this weekend. Been too long." I had not picked up the phone or gone looking. I was standing in my own kitchen. The distinction mattered to me. 3 days before the trip, on Thursday evening, I sat at the desk in our home office and wrote an email. It was not addressed to Simone or Garrett. It was addressed to Diane Whitfield. I had her email because Simone had helped organize the company holiday party, and a guest registry containing spouses' contact information had remained in our shared drive for 2 years. It was one of those small bureaucratic artifacts nobody expects to matter again. My email was short. I attached the hotel confirmation listing both Simone and Garrett, and the follow-up confirmation about Garrett's preferred corner suite. Then I wrote, "I think this belongs to you. I'm sorry." That was all. I did not add drama, accusations, or a clever line designed to hurt anyone. I sent it from the quiet of the home office, while the house still smelled like the candles Simone liked to burn in the evening. Then I waited. On Friday morning, Simone kissed me on the cheek before leaving. Her rolling carry-on made its familiar sound across the hardwood floor, a sound I had heard 100 times. I stood at the kitchen window and watched her place the bag in the trunk. She drove away. I poured myself a second cup of coffee. My phone rang 47 minutes later. I did not recognize the number, but I recognized the Atlanta area code. I missed the call, and a voicemail appeared. It was Simone. She was not calling from the road to Nashville. She was in a gas station parking lot on Interstate 85, about 22 miles from our house. The voicemail lasted 91 seconds, and it was one of the most remarkable messages I have ever received, which is saying something after 14 years, in a profession where people regularly leave remarkable messages. She was not crying the way I might have expected. She did not sound devastated, at least not at first. She sounded furious, but it was a controlled, high-pitched fury, the kind that appears when someone has been caught and spends the first few seconds trying to make the consequences somebody else's fault. Conrad, I need you to call me back right now. I don't know what you think you know or what you think you did, but you need to understand that you just destroyed something. You had no right. You didn't even come to me. You didn't even ask. You just went behind my back and... Then there was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped several registers. The fury disappeared, and something raw came through, something she probably had not intended to reveal. Garrett called me from the airport. Diane called him screaming. She's going to their house right now. Conrad, their kids are there. Their kids are 12 and 9, Conrad. Another pause followed. Then she asked, "Why didn't you just talk to me?" The call ended. I put my phone on the kitchen counter, face up, the way Simone used to leave hers. I considered calling her back. I sat with my coffee for a long time, thinking about the question in that voicemail. Why did I not just talk to her? I have thought about that line more than any other part of this story, because beneath the attempt to shift responsibility, there was a real question that deserved an honest answer. Maybe the brave and honest thing would have been a different kind of confrontation. In my professional life, confronting someone before the evidence is complete usually produces worse outcomes. People lie. Stories change. Paper trails disappear. The first person to show their hand often loses control of what follows. But this was not a corporate investigation. It was my marriage. For 11 days, I had eaten dinner across from Simone, driven with her to the farmer's market on Saturday morning, and lain beside her in the dark, without asking a single direct question. It was not only because I wanted to be strategic. It was because I was afraid of the answer. I had evidence. I had a pattern. I had 11 days of certainty building inside me like pressure in a sealed container. Still, I could not make myself sit across from my wife at our kitchen table and say, I know what has been happening. What do you want to do about it? Instead, I forwarded the hotel records to another woman and allowed the explosion to happen at a distance, where I would not have to feel the immediate heat. That is the part of my decision I am not proud of. Simone came home that Friday night, not Sunday. She walked through the door shortly after 7 without her rolling carry-on and without the green blazer she had been wearing when she left. I was sitting in the living room, pretending to read something I cannot remember. She sat in the chair across from the couch rather than beside me. Neither of us spoke for a full minute. Then she said, I want to tell you the truth. I said, okay. What she told me was complicated, and I will not reshape it into a cleaner story, where one of us was entirely evil and the other entirely innocent. 14 years of investigative work have taught me that narratives like that are rare. Simone had been unhappy for about 2 years. It was not the dramatic kind of unhappiness, where everything is visibly terrible. It was quieter and, in some ways, harder to name, because nothing looked obviously wrong, and she was not sure she had permission to feel unhappy. We had not had a real fight in years, but we had not had a real conversation in nearly as long. In her words, we had become very efficient at being married and very bad at actually talking to each other. Garrett first became someone she could talk to about work, about the things she did well, about the things she wanted, and about thoughts she had never figured out how to say to me. Then it became something else. She did not pretend that our emotional distance made the affair acceptable. She said plainly, I knew it was wrong, and I kept doing it. I'm sorry. I told her, I knew for 11 days, and I said nothing. I'm sorry for that part too. We sat in the living room for a long time. 2 days later, Diane Whitfield called me. She did not call to thank me or to scream at me. She called because she had a question and believed I might be the only person willing to answer honestly. She asked how long I had known. I told her, 11 days in terms of what I could confirm. In terms of suspicion, longer. She went quiet, then said, I've been suspicious for 8 months. I kept talking myself out of it. I recognized that immediately, and I told her so. We spoke for about 20 minutes. I do not know exactly what Diane decided to do about her marriage, and I never considered it my business to ask. By the end of the call, she sounded like someone who had been handed something terrible but necessary, the truth. Not a softened version wrapped in gentleness by people trying to protect her, but the actual truth, even though it landed hard. Before hanging up, she said, I'm not going to thank you, but I'm not angry at you either. You did what you thought was right, and it's what I would have wanted someone to do for me. I told her I was sorry for what she was going through. She replied, You too. In the weeks that followed, Garrett was placed on administrative leave while his company reviewed the situation. Using company resources, including a corporate hotel rate, to facilitate a personal relationship with a direct report was not something the Human Resources Department could ignore. I never learned the final outcome of his employment, and I will not pretend to know it. What I do know is that he did not remain Simone's supervisor for long. Simone took a leave of absence and stayed with her sister in Savannah for 3 weeks. We spoke by phone during that time, but not like estranged spouses who turned every sentence into a negotiation. We spoke like two people who had moved beyond performing a marriage and were trying to determine what, if anything, remained underneath the performance. During those weeks, I discovered that the thing I feared losing was not exactly what I had imagined. It was not primarily the house, the routines, or even the version of Simone I thought I knew. I was afraid of losing the version of myself I had built around the belief that I understood the things I cared about. I had believed I was a man who paid attention, a man who would notice sooner and respond with courage. Instead, I had missed things. Not because I was careless. In my professional life, I missed very little. I missed them because people can train themselves not to see what seeing clearly would cost them before they are ready to pay the price. 3 months after the Friday Simone returned without her carry-on, we sat at our kitchen island with a mediator between us. We were not there because we had already decided to divorce. We were there because each of us had decided, separately and then together, that we would not make a permanent decision about the rest of our lives until we understood what we actually wanted. The mediator was named Yvette. Her office was near Emory University. She asked each of us to answer one question without looking at the other person. What do you actually want? I said, I want to stop being someone who handles crises from a distance, even when I'm afraid of them. Simone said, I want to stop pretending things are fine so often that I forget what fine actually feels like. Yvette wrote both answers down without comment. Then she said, those are compatible goals. I still do not know how this story ends. I am telling it from inside the story, which is an uncomfortable position for someone like me. I prefer completed case files, retrospective clarity, and conclusions supported by evidence. Here, there is no clean conclusion yet. On that Thursday, I sent an email I had the technical right to send. It was right because Diane deserved the truth, and cowardly because it let me act without facing Simone directly. Both can be true. Truth is messier than a case file, less satisfying than a verdict, and more human than our plans. The voicemail remains on my phone. I have considered deleting it, but I have not. I do not keep it to punish Simone, and I do not need it as evidence. I was there. I keep it because of the change in her voice halfway through, the moment the anger dropped away and something else emerged. I keep it because of her question. Why did you not just talk to me? That question deserved a better answer than the silence I gave it, and I am still working on that answer. There is another reason those 11 days stay with me. People sometimes ask what the hardest part of investigative work is. They expect me to mention danger, legal complexity, or the moral weight of exposing wrongdoing. The real answer is patience. The discipline to sit with incomplete information and resist moving before the moment is right, even when you could interrupt what is happening. The first available moment is not always the right moment. I learned that during my first year in this work, while investigating internal embezzlement at a manufacturing company in Duluth, Georgia. By the end of the second week, I had identified the main suspect. By the end of the third, I had strong circumstantial evidence. My supervisor, a former FBI financial crimes analyst named Dale Farnsworth, had the communication style of a brick wall and the instincts of a man who had spent decades being right. He told me to keep watching. I argued that I already had what we needed and that waiting would waste the client's money. Dale said, "You have a good story. You don't have a complete one. Wait." By the end of the fifth week, 3 additional conspirators had exposed themselves. The embezzlement was 5 times larger than I had estimated, and the evidence we ultimately gave the client was airtight in a way my week 3 evidence had not been. I never challenged Dale about patience again. I thought about Dale during those 11 days. I thought about him while making coffee in my kitchen as Simone prepared for work, listening to her move through our house, with the ease of someone who did not know that the man on the other side of the wall had discovered what she was hiding. That is a particular kind of silence. Anyone who has lived inside it knows what I mean. Those days felt surreal in a way my professional experience had not prepared me for. At work, the subject of an investigation is not usually the person who knows exactly how much sugar you take, buys the brand of orange juice you have preferred since college, and moves through the rooms that hold your shared history. The emotional mathematics of personal life does not work like professional analysis. I was patient. I waited. I built the picture. And when the moment came, I still was not ready. That is another thing I learned. Preparedness and readiness are not the same state. I had the evidence, the plan, and 11 days of deliberate control. Yet when Simone rolled her carry-on out the door and looked exactly as she had on countless mornings over 11 years, I felt the floor shift beneath me. I had prepared for that moment. I was not ready for it. There is one more uncomfortable truth about those 11 days. I considered doing nothing. Not forever, perhaps, but I seriously imagined closing the hotel confirmation, pretending I had never seen it, and continuing my life. I imagined the marriage continuing, the pattern continuing, and myself remaining silent because the alternative looked like an earthquake, and I did not know whether I wanted to live in the rubble. Some people make that choice, and I do not judge them. Anyone who says the choice between knowing and acting is simple has probably never had to make it. I could not choose silence, not because I was exceptionally courageous, but because I understood that the marriage existing after my silence would not be a marriage. It would be a performance of one. I had spent 11 years trying to build something real, and I was unwilling to preserve something false, merely because the truth was expensive. So I acted. I did not act with the courage I would have preferred, but I acted. And when I reconsider the entire sequence, the person I return to most often is not Garrett, Simone, or even myself. It is Diane. She had lived inside the same uncertainty I had known. Suspicious moments rationalized away, 8 months of feeling something was wrong, and persuading herself otherwise because the alternative was unthinkable. Nobody gave her the missing information until I did. I still have complicated feelings about the right to know, the cost of knowing, and whether honesty and kindness ever arrive in the same form. Diane said she was not angry and would have wanted someone to tell her. I believed her. I also understood that a person can be grateful for the truth and devastated by it at the same time. Gratitude and destruction are not opposites. She was carrying both. The email took me about 4 minutes to send. I chose the words carefully, but not slowly. 4 minutes changed the shape of 4 lives. I will not pretend there is no weight in that. The honest version of this story is not that a righteous husband executed a perfect revenge plan, destroyed everyone who had wronged him, and walked away to applause. The honest version is that two people handled their marriage badly in different ways and for different reasons. A third woman received an email she had never requested on a Thursday night, and it changed the structure of her life. A voicemail was left in a parking lot on Interstate 85, and that message contained more truth about the disorder of being human than any verdict I could deliver. What stays with me most is how long people can feel that something is wrong before allowing themselves to believe it. I waited 11 days after confirmation. Diane doubted herself for 8 months. Before that, I had ignored quieter signs for even longer. We do this because truth is inconvenient, and because the cost of seeing clearly can feel greater than the cost of remaining uncertain. Waiting for facts was not my central mistake. My mistake was letting professional patience become personal avoidance. I built a silent case file when I also needed the courage to speak. The first available moment may not be right, but eventually, truth must be said aloud to the person in front of you. I first signed the name Conrad Hale when I was 7 years old. Since then, I have signed it on contracts, reports, and countless completed case files. I nearly signed it at the bottom of divorce papers, but I did not, because Simone and I were not finished deciding what came next. I do not know what document I will sign next, or what our final outcome will be. I only know that I will sign with steadier hands than the man who spent 11 days preparing to reply, "Have a good trip." That much, at least, I have figured out. I have to pay attention not only to the things other people try to hide, but also to the things I train myself not to see. Sometimes they are worth looking at. Sometimes the bravest act is not exposing the truth from a safe distance. Sometimes it is sitting across from someone you love, feeling the heat directly, and saying what you know before silence becomes another form of deception.